Hello, and welcome to I Remember When, sponsored by the Gresham Historical Society. I'm Gwenda McCall. Today our program is going to be a little bit different. We've left the studios of Multnomah Cable Access on the campus of Mount Hood Community College, and we're in downtown Gresham on Main Street for a guided tour of Old Town Gresham. Our guide will be Dan Murphy. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Gwenda. It's a pleasure to be here. I was born in 1918 on the corner of First and Miller, which is now occupied by Dr. Quall's Optometric Clinic. One of my first remembrances of Gresham is this old drugstore, different building then, but it was started in 1905 by Arthur Dowsett. And it was a sort of a socializing place because my father used to come up here and bring me as a small child to visit. And I would take the liberty to read the only comic book that they had available then, which was a Charlie Chaplin. The father didn't have enough money, or so he felt, to pay 10 cents for one, so I read it for free.
Oh, what memories. Now, you had a memory also about an alleyway that went right where we're standing.
Yes, I certainly did. Exactly. It led up in back of us to an ice house. Ice was a real luxury at that time, and very few people could afford a refrigerator because they were too expensive. There was a man who sat out in front of the ice house to receive payment for ice as it was sold. Because ice was a luxury, us kids would like to get into that ice house, but we had to get rid of him, so we'd throw rocks at him and he would chase us. And when he would chase us and vacate the place, the rest of us kids, or the gang, we'd duck inside there, get our ice, run out, and beat it before he could get back.
Oh, you little devils, you.
Oh, but it was fun, and that ice tasted delicious on a hot day.
I bet. And on our right is a parking lot. What used to be in this parking lot?
Over there it used to be the telephone company. And in one corner of it was A.H. Mealy's jewelry store. There was only one pay telephone in Gresham, and it was located inside the telephone booth. You put your money up into a slot, dials your number. When the party answered, you pushed a little button. The coin fell down inside to activate the receiver so you could make communication with the people that you talked to. But that was the one and only pay telephone that we had in the city of Gresham.
And that building is no longer here. Now it's a parking lot.
That is correct.
In the corner was a jewelry store.
That is correct. That was part of where the telephone building was located.
And who owned the store?
A.H. Mealy.
All right, thank you. Let's move on down the street here. Now here we are in the corner of Main and Powell, and I really wanted to be sure and include this because there was something special right in this intersection of Main and Powell. Dan?
Thank you, Gwenda. Many, many years ago on this corner there used to be a fountain. On top of it was a Statue of Liberty, but at the bottom was a watering trough because many farmers did not have cars and they used to drive their horse and buggy in here, and they used the watering trough to give their horses a drink on a hot day.
Boy, you can see that this intersection has become so busy, and now you understand why they had to take out the watering trough. Right now they have so much construction going on. Let's move on.
Okay.
Now here we are in front of the Duane C. Ely building. Who was Duane C. Ely?
Duane C. Ely was a man who lived in Oregon City, and he built this building many, many years ago. He is since now deceased, and who owns it, I don't know, but the name has been up there on the marquee for as many years as I can remember.
Now we're in front of Cloud Tree and Son. What used to be in this store?
This used to be the distributorship for farm equipment and was owned by Hessel Implement Company. They also sold Willys Overland automobiles, and they were the only distributor for farm equipment in the city of Gresham at that time, many years ago.
Oh, that's interesting. All right, let's walk up a little farther to Main Street Grocery. Now, Main Street Grocery, what did that used to be?
This used to be a hardware store owned by a man named L.L. Kidder. They sold all kinds of hardware, and this is where I used to buy 22 shells for my rifle. that I used to shoot sparrows in my backyard, because 2 blocks from Main Street, you were practically out in farmland.
He actually sold you?
Oh, yes, he did, but he always questioned me very thoroughly. Did my father know about this? Do you know how to handle a gun? Be careful with this. Remember, it's always the empty gun that kills people.
You know, I remember the Kidder hardware store when we came to Gresham 12 years ago. It was still here.
That is correct. It was taken over by his son, Roger Kidder, who was a classmate of mine in high school many years ago.
All right, let's go on now to Pacific Crest. Now, what did this store used to be, Dan?
This used to be a grocery store owned by a man named Walrad. As you walked into the double doors behind me, as you walked to the left were the groceries, off to the right was the dry goods. At the grocery section, they didn't have supermarkets then. You walked up to the counter, a clerk waited on you, you asked for a can of beans or a can of corn, and they didn't have the thousands of items that a supermarket has now. The clerk would get the merchandise that you wanted, and you could either pay cash or charge it, and they would give you free delivery. Around the corner was a large area that was a loading dock of where they put hay and bulk feed. And inside this store today, upstairs is a weighing scale that is still a reminder of the old days of when this was a store that sold seed, feed, hay, and so forth.
Oh, how wonderful that they preserve that.
Yes, it is. It's a real pleasure to have had business to do with the old days and before supermarkets took over.
I can imagine. Now let's cross 2nd Street to Amiton Furniture. Here we are in front of Amiton. What do you remember this being?
This used to be the W.R. Hicks clothing store and was for many, many years. Dick Hicks took over after his father passed away. He ran a very successful store. But as kids, we always had nicknames for everybody, so we nicknamed Dick Hicks Tiny Levine the Brassiere Merchant. Oh. I'm not so sure whether he liked the name or not, but he never had any choice but to have to accept it, as we all had nicknames. Upstairs, it was a large area that was converted to a dance floor. Just up the street was a walkway that walked from the street at a elevated plane to get upstairs. And at one time there was an entrepreneur came to Gresham and he converted it into a roller rink.
Oh,
well,
fun.
On Friday and Saturday nights, you can imagine the racket downstairs of trying to converse, talk to the people, drowned out by all of that racket from the roller skating. And I was one of them up there because I loved to roller skate.
Oh, that sounds like great fun. And then behind us is Don's Restaurant. What was in that?
That was Diedel's Sanitary Meat Market, and they sold very good meat. They were German heritage. They made very good homemade sausage, and I remember that's where I used to buy all the weenies and ham that my father sold in his business years ago. Which
we'll get to in a few minutes, right. Let's go diagonally across the street to the M&M Restaurant. Now, what did this M&M Restaurant used to be?
This used to be known as the Piggly Wiggly store. It was owned by a man named Walzer. It was the first job I had after I got out of high school in 1936. I worked 2 days a week, Friday and Saturday, 14 hours a day, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night, and I got paid $2 a day. One of my jobs was to put out what is known as the front of the store. That is, on benches, you'd put out and trim the lettuce, the celery, and the other vegetables to make it look pleasant. They also had shopping carts in here, so this might have been the forerunner of the supermarket, because you'd go around and pick off the shelves the merchandise you wanted. You would go up to the check stand, and the clerk would total up your merchandise, and you'd pay cash. There were no charges at Piggly Wiggly.
Oh my, modern store, huh?
Very much so.
And you told me that in the area where the lounge of this M&M is now, it used to be the blacksmith shop.
Yes, in the back of this building, there was Ed Osburn's blacksmith shop. He was quite a character. He had a penchant to where he wanted to learn to play the piano. I took piano lessons then, and by our standards, we thought he was an old man, although he was probably in his late 50s or early 60s. But he would sit there at recitals and play along with us kids and enjoyed it very much.
Good for him.
Also, he shoed horses in there, because it was the only blacksmith shop they had in the city of Gresham. Well, us kids, for a little excitement, we'd take our slingshots and make tin-foil spit wads, creep around the corner when he was shoeing a horse, hit that horse, and the horse would flinch, and of course that would slow down the job. That would make old Ed madder and all get out. He'd grab a hot soldering iron and chase us kids, and we'd run and laugh.
You were a really mischievous little thing, weren't you?
Oh, yes, we did a good job when we did it.
Now, right about where we're standing under the M&M sign, this wasn't part of the Piggly Wiggly. What was this?
This used to be known as Charlie Tabor's Drugstore. That existed for many, many years. Mr. Tabor's health started to fail, then he sold to another pharmacist.
All right, let's move on down Main Street. All right, as we walk south on Main Street here, we're approaching the Toy Bear, which I know is my children's favorite store in Gresham. What used to be here?
Where the Toy Bear is now used to be Ben Pancrat's paint and wallpaper store. It was long and narrow, and there was a dividing partition that separated the one on the left, which was an open-air harness shop that ran clear through to the alley and back. After the harness shop went out of business, the small area was built for W.W. Siemens watch and repair service. Later, Ben Pancratz built a building over on First Street so he could accommodate larger clientele and carry a larger inventory of merchandise.
Well, that's really interesting. So when we noticed that the Toy Bear has two doors, it used to be two separate, long, thin stores.
That is correct.
All right. Now, as we walk a little farther south, we're going to get close to your old haunt, aren't we, Dan?
We certainly are. I remember that well.
All right, here we go. Now we're coming to Miller's Gresham Inn. I know you can tell us a lot about this place, Dan.
Yes, I certainly can. This used to belong to my father, Dan Murphy Sr. It was a combination pool hall and tavern in those days also. Somehow it had earned the name of Murphy's Bucket of Blood, although that there were never any fights and my father ran a very respectable place. There were many interesting things that happened in here because I got to know all of the local characters because this was the local watering hole where they all stopped. There were many interesting things that happened. I remember my father used to pay 16 cents a dozen for buns because he sold sandwiches. He kept his pennies in a separate jar rather than in the cash register, and he'd say, count out 16 pennies and run down and get a dozen buns. Well, there were always more than 16 pennies that came out of that jar because I would stop at a confectionery along the way to buy myself some goodies. He was very close with his money, and I never got an allowance, although he did give me 10 cents for the local movie. I remember very well in 1932 when Prohibition was repealed and we got real beer, 3.2% alcohol. He got 2 kegs that day and it sold out in 3 hours' time.
Oh, wow, what a party that must have been.
Yeah, it certainly was.
We do have a picture of you, Dan, when you were about that age.
Yes, I do have a picture of me about that age, dressed in the customary clothes of a young boy at that time, which were knickers.
Dan, now we're in front of Silk Bloomers. What used to be here, Dan?
This was the place where the original Gresham Theater was located. It was owned by a man named Van Dusen. We had movies twice a week, Friday and Saturday night. That's when we had the old silent flicks.
Oh, fun.
Oh, it was real interesting. And my favorite cowboy character was Hoot Gibson. And when talkies came in, everybody was so anxious to hear them that they only had one projector to start with, so they would run one reel off, have to turn up the house lights while they changed reels, turn the lights off, and then start the second reel again. In a few weeks, though, we got the second projector so we could have continuity. The usher was Shaky Eddie. Shaky Eddie was a character who had a tick, but he was a likable character. For heat in the building we had an old coal-burning stove down in front, and it never failed during a part of a real dramatic part of the sequence where you wanted to catch every word. Old Shaky Eddie would go down there with this coal scuttle and fill up the stove and drown out the sound, and you'd miss the point completely. Now, during the silent area, we had a woman who played the piano. Her name was Lita Duncan, and I'll bet I heard the doll dance at least 10,000 times because she only knew about 5 numbers, but we did have some background music that tried to fit the mood of the picture.
Oh, those are great stories.
And the cost was 10 cents for a child, 25 cents for an adult.
Oh, gone are the good old days, huh, Dan?
Yes, and my father would break down and give me a dime to go. He also had hickeys in his place that were little aluminum discs that card players would win when they would have card games.
Now, you're talking about back at your dad's billiard hall right behind us here.
That is correct, the old bucket of blood.
Okay.
Well, sometimes instead of a dime, he'd give me 2 hickeys. And I'd go over there and I'd tell Mrs. Van Dusen, and I said, now these are very good right next door. You can buy 10 cents worth of merchandise with these. She'd laugh and accept them and let me go in.
Oh, she did. Good for her. All right, let's move on down the street here. Now we're approaching a store called Unique Gifts and Decor. What used to be here, Dan?
This used to be a store known as the Anchor Store. It was owned by the Walrad family, and they sold dry goods and merchandise prior to moving over on the corner of 2nd and Main Street.
Now, we do have a photograph of this Anchor Store, and the little boy in front that's about 10 or 11 years old, that's Burton Walrad, and he's still a prominent person in this community. He's about 83 years old.
A smart businessman, and he did a lot for Gresham during his younger days when he was very active in business and civic affairs.
I think he was the first president of the Chamber of Commerce, too.
I think you are correct on that.
All right, let's move down to the corner here of 1st and Main. Now, we're approaching a store called Folk Art by Request. What used to be here, Dan?
On the corner was the Bank of Gresham, and prior to that was the Condon Hotel. It had a regular dining room and room upstairs for guests. But that was many, many years ago, and the Bank of Gresham then later took over. The Condon Hotel went out of business, and the hotel rooms upstairs were converted to office space.
Mm-hmm. And I know my daughter took ballet lessons upstairs, too. All right, now, Dan, let's go ahead and cross 1st Street. We're going to be standing in front of a parking lot that's next to the Glass Butterfly. But I know that this whole block from 1st to Powell used to have a big brick building on it. Tell us about the big brick building.
Yes, it ran from 1st Street over to Powell Street. It was a large building. It housed the other bank in the city of Gresham. It was called the First State Bank. The bank was on the corner. On the area just in back of me was a clothing store called Aylesworth Clothing Store. That stayed in business for quite a few years. Then it changed to a different type of an operation and became Lundquist and Gilbertson's grocery store. Upstairs there was office space, and that's where the Gresham Band used to practice. And they made a pretty good music, except you could always hear the clinkers way down the street when they'd hit a few of those.
Now, when we show the photographs that our audience is looking at, they'll notice that the First State Bank was just a small one-story building on the corner, and then they added on and brought the building clear down to 1st Street and put on a 2nd floor.
Yes, they did. Upstairs was office space. There was a doctor's office located up there, and also living quarters for apartments.
Now let's mention, I'd like to be sure our audience knows that across Powell, where it's now the city park, there actually used to be buildings and stores sitting right on Powell Street with the back of them on stilts.
Yes, they did. The reason they sat on stilts was because our old friend Johnson Creek ran behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And during the spring, during the heavy rains, there was always flooded basements. But that in time was torn down. But I still vividly remember the buildings that were on the south side of Powell Street as it ran up to Roberts.
Well, Dan, I have enjoyed your visit so much and your guided tour of Old Town Gresham. I hope you can come back and see us again sometime.
I will. It's been a pleasure doing this tour, and I'm most amiable and available anytime you wish me.
Thank you. We'd like to close today's show a little bit differently. Let's meet down at the Gresham City Library, where my own daughter, Leslie McCall, is waiting for us. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Mom.
Leslie is 9 years old and a fourth grade student at East Gresham Grade School. Many people in our audience don't realize that the Gresham Historical Society works closely with the Gresham Grade School District in educating the students about their rich pioneer heritage. Volunteers from the Historical Society visit every fourth grade class and speak to every fourth grade student about their history in this community. It's very important to us that the children appreciate Gresham as their hometown. Now, Leslie's written a 100-word essay from information that she learned from these speakers, and I'd like to have her read it for you. Leslie?
My favorite place in Gresham is Old Town Gresham, because when I go in the stores, I like to think about what they used to be like in the olden days. Cloudtree & Son was Hessel Implement, where farmers could buy tractors. Gresham depended on the berry crops. Main Street Grocery was Miller Kidder Hardware, where they sold everything from hot water heaters to little red wagons. Pacific Crest was Walrad Mercantile, where you could buy groceries and clothes to make your own clothes. The Toy Bear was a harness shop. Back of the M&M Restaurant was a blacksmith shop. The Rexall has been the Dowsett Pharmacy since 1903. The intersection of Main and Powell had a horse trough with the Statue of Liberty on top. Gresham is a great place to grow up with a lot of history. Someday the way I remember Gresham will be the olden days to my grandchildren. I'm Leslie McCall. Thank you for joining us on I Remember When.